I'm sure many of you have already seen the video of this young far leftist woman saying that if you have the nerve, the caucasity, as she says, to say all lives matter, that she would stab you. And then while you're bleeding out, she said she would show you her paper cut and say, my cut matters too. Because of this shocking video, she has lost her job. She is now blaming Trump supporters because of this. I'm sorry. Trump supporters oppose cancel culture. Now, to be fair, because we often see this, I see this from progressive leftists, many who are actually the good ones, like Glenn Greenwald. They mention that, but now all of a sudden, where are the Trump supporters to defend someone who was fired from their job for, say, criticizing Israel? And I point out, many of these people on the left will demand cancel culture for past offenses and then say harumph when it comes for them, which is why people on the right, intellectual dark web types, middle of the road people, will not defend them. Now, as for this woman who lost her job, obviously she should not have lost her job. I think it's so dumb. I'll read you the context. We'll talk about it. But the bigger point here, all lives matter. Who really supports it? It turns out, according to some data from, I believe it's an Economist YouGov poll, more people like all lives matter than Black Lives Matter. And that's really fascinating because if you were to live on social media or wherever it is this young woman lives, you would think the opposite. Apparently, according to some data, it's actually the African-American community that thinks all lives matter is better. I was at an event in Cincinnati. I was live streaming. And there was actually a large protest group of older, liberal Black people who were chanting all lives matter. And I found it really fascinating because it seemed to fly in the face of what I'd been told about the movement. But the reality is, and you'll learn this lesson if you pay attention, people are people regardless of their race. People should be judged based on the content of their character, not the color of their skin. And you will find that there are some Black people who are conservative, some white people who are liberal, some white people who are conservative, some Asians who are liberal. The point is, we have clearly seen that race isn't a factor in what a person believes. Their character can be anything. And this brings me to this story now about this woman. And should she have been fired and what she said? So the first thing I'll do, let's read the story, see what she said, and I'll break down this. You know what, man? A lot of people are saying that she was threatening to stab people. I think that's unfair. Sure, she said she would stab people, but it was very obviously meant to be an analogy, making a point that if you had a wound, she would complain that her cut is just as important. Let's read the story. We'll break this down. And then I'm going to show you this polling data. Harvard grad blames Trump supporters for being fired from her dream job at Deloitte after posting a TikTok saying she'd stab anyone who said all lives matter. I think I'm pronouncing Deloitte right. I don't know. The Harvard graduate who went viral for saying she'd stab anyone who told her all lives matter in a TikTok video has tearfully returned to the video sharing site to reveal that she's been fired from her dream job at Deloitte. Clara Janover, who graduated in May with a degree in government and psychology, posted a TikTok video this week where she said angrily, "The next person who has the nerve to tell me all lives matter, I'ma stab you. I'ma stab you, and while you're bleeding out, I'ma show you my paper cut and say my cut matters too." She says it was a satirical analogy that was taken at face value when it shouldn't have been. I believe that's correct. When you watch the full video, she's clearly not literally threatening to stab somebody, okay? She's making a point that many leftists make, that right now, the people who are in need of support are Black lives, and that's why they say Black Lives Matter. She was making an edgy comment. I can respect that, and I don't think she should be fired, but I understand why people called her out for it. First of all, if you want to make edgy humor, you should know that even outside of cancel culture, edgy humor gets you in trouble. It can get you in trouble. But I'm not going to sit here and pretend she should lose her job over this on the surface. But this is the bigger philosophical question. As someone who is a purveyor, as somebody who emboldens cancel culture, should she not reap what she has sown? And that's the bigger question. So while my personal opinion is cancel culture, and I don't think she should lose her job, at the grand scale, when you step back, you kind of got to let these people lay in their own beds. Am I going to intervene because she decided this is the world she wanted? You get what you ask for. Why would I come to your defense now? And to the bigger point, this is something I guess there are many progressive individuals, people like I mentioned, Glenn Greenwald, who I'm not a biggest fan of, but I respect in regards to defending free speech and calling out the fake news. I appreciate that he's breaking through the nonsense. But when people like Glenn come out and say, you see, now that we're being threatened and our professors, are being fired for saying offensive things, the conservatives won't come to their defense. It's not an issue of principle, especially for me. Because I actually will defend them, as I am defending her to a certain capacity. The issue is, if you are going to dedicate your life to destroying and tearing down my rights, then the last thing I want is for you to be able to keep doing that. On principle, I believe you have the right to speak your mind and say your opinions, even if you oppose free speech, 100%. So that's why I actually will defend someone's right to free speech, regardless of what they're saying. Even if they want to take away my rights, I will point out, well, you have a right to your opinion, and I will counter your opinion with a better opinion. But when it comes to the larger population, every single Trump supporter, every single conservative, the ones who have been censored, restricted, and banned, you expect them to come out and defend you now after all of these people have lost their opportunity to speak? I'm not surprised they won't do it. The video went viral, and many critics called for her to be fired because of it. And Wednesday night, Jennifer returned to the video sharing app to blame Trump supporters for taking her job from her. Freedom of speech doesn't mean freedom from consequences, ma'am. I know this is what Trump supporters wanted because standing up for Black Lives Matter put me in a place online to be seen by millions of people. The job that I'd worked really hard to get and meant a lot to me just called me and fired me because of everything. I don't know if everyone's seen, but my Black Lives Matter videos have been circulating a lot. They were picked up by conservatives and spread and shared, and people were demanding that I be fired, which I just got the job I worked really hard for. I'm still not going to stop talking about and defend Black Lives Matter. You can't take away my spirit and my devotion for human rights, she said. In a second video, she sobbed, Trump supporters took my job away from me. And while she was crying, she was saying things like, I am too strong. No, okay? You are a child. You joined the mob and threw the bricks. And when the bricks came flying back, you went, help, help, I'm being repressed. Sorry. It's not how it works. This is the perfect example of that meme where it's a feminist and she's shoveling opinions over a wall. And then when opinions come flying back, she says, help, help, misogyny. It's exactly what this is. If you advocate for cancel culture, if you advocate for people being fired from their jobs and kicked out of their homes or abandoned by their families, then when you get fired, it's what you asked for. Shouldn't you be happy? You're being held accountable exactly as you demanded. You threatened violence, even in jest. You see, this is why I tell you we must defend free speech, because I understand what the point you were trying to make when you said you would stab somebody and show your paper cut. You were trying to show the disparity between a serious wound and a paper cut. But guess what? In the online world that you have helped create, irony, sarcasm, these things don't exist. Everything is literal. So that's all that matters. Your job that they're scared. These corporations are scared of online controversy and they will fire you too. The only reason the left has gotten away with all of this for as long as they have is because conservatives don't actually engage in culture war tactics. They oppose the cancel culture for the most part. But now, lo and behold, I'm starting to see conservatives talk about putting together email lists and sending out mass messages and actually getting people fired. Now, it's happened a little bit in the past, but typically it's only the left that actually threatens these things. And so what ends up happening is these cancel culture people, they're bored, they have no jobs, and they have student activist groups and activist nonprofits, and they'll spam a corporation or a job, Deloitte or whatever, saying this person's bad, they're naughty, fire them. And so the company says, we can't deal with this, you're fired. Oh no. You mean to tell me Trump supporters actually made some phone calls and got you fired? I'm not even convinced it was Trump supporters. You know why? This story was all over the place. This story wasn't just being spread around by Trump supporters. It was on mainstream news websites talking about the extremist woman saying she was going to stab somebody. It was spicy, hot content. And news outlets could not resist. Ooh, she's threatening to stab people. Oh no, here comes the extremist, and it came for you. So there's her. I don't even believe she's actually crying, to be honest. Like, her whole shtick has been shock content. She's probably loving the attention she's getting. She's probably loving being an E-personality. The job I worked really hard for and meant, blah, 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 got fired. She then accused Deloitte of cowardice and said she was going to be an indelible change in the world. I'm going to accuse Deloitte of cowardice too, 100%. If you were a company and you just immediately fire someone because of some outrage, you are pathetic, okay? I don't like the ideology she espouses. I do believe there's a bit of a cathartic release in watching her get fired, the comeuppance of those who would create this culture. But I'm just so sick of it, man. Just stop firing people. Stop firing people. Stop canceling people. Stop banning people. Just shut up. She's a dumb young person, said something dumb online. It's clearly not a crime. You know, it's a free speech issue. And she got fired for it. Well, you know what? You're not going to see me make any phone calls to this company and defend her. I'm not going to do it. I'll talk about my principles. But my private business, sorry. She said, I'm too strong for you. Oh, Trump supporters just took my job away from me. I've gotten death threats, violent threats, and that's not okay. None of that's okay. She says, I'm too strong for you. I am too strong for any of you. All lives matter, racist Trump supporters. It sucks, but it doesn't suck as much as systemic racism. And there's the flip. Don't look at me. Talk about systemic racism. She says, blah, blah, blah. I'm sorry you can't see that. I don't care. I'm not going to read the rest of her statement or whatever. So, while many praised Jennifer for her stance against racism, she was bombarded with negative comments. Will liberal colleges and universities ever teach students that speech does not equal violence? One person said. There you go. And hers was borderline. I get she was making a joke, but if you want edgy humor, I'm fine with it. I get it. Dave Chappelle did a bit where he talked about buckshot. What is it? No, birdshot, buckshot, birdshot, birdshot, buckshot, buckshot. You may have seen the joke. He was talking about how you're supposed to properly load a shotgun, and you got the warning shot, and then you got the kill shots, and then a couple warning shots. And he even made a joke about literally shooting a guy in his house with a shotgun, who then rises up and he goes, "Oh no, he's on meth." That was Dave Chappelle making edgy humor. Of course, he doesn't literally want to shoot somebody. And Dave Chappelle was actually attacked by people like this, not her, but many of the critics attacked him for it. You don't get to slam edgy humor and act offended and then get mad when people come after you. So here we can see, this is what John Miller says. It's funny how she thinks Trump supporters did this to her, as if they called up Deloitte and told them to fire her. You did this to yourself, sweetheart. You want to be a strong woman and all that. Take responsibility for your words. Cancel culture wasn't made by Trump supporters. Sorry. Moving on. I saw this thread. It's interesting. It's from Ryan James Grodowski. He says, I have no idea why All Lives Matter is trending, but since it is, I thought it'd be a great time to share two polls from June 2020 by The Economist and YouGov. They found more Americans had a positive association with All Lives Matter over Black Lives Matter. Wow. Now that is interesting. Take a look at this first image. Do the following slogans carry a positive or negative association to you? Black Lives Matter is 52% positive, 22% negative. Blue Lives Matter is 36% positive and 22% negative, meaning most people are neutral on it. All Lives Matter, 56% positive, 23% negative. More people have a positive association with All Lives Matter. So when she comes out and says these racist All Lives Matter Trump supporters, oh no. You mean the majority of people? Maybe the reason you got fired is not because Trump supporters called this in, but because regular people or even leftists called it in. Yeah, only 23% view it negatively. So I know I hear all of the people complaining about All Lives Matter, but these are fringe activists. Regular people are probably like, yep, equality. We got some more images, so check this out. Do the following slogans carry a positive or negative association to you? Black Lives Matter, it's a different poll, I guess, says positive 48% and negative 30%. All Lives Matter, 53% and negative 23%. These are from, according to Ryan, June 2020, two different polls. In one of them, more people in this country have a positive view of All Lives Matter as opposed to Black Lives Matter. You can say whichever one of those you want. I don't think you should lose your job over it, right? But that's interesting. It goes to show that these fringe minority characters, I mean like ideological minority, it's a fringe fanaticism. They believe they're in the majority and then they're shocked. Oh, how did I lose my job when I said I'd stab somebody? That's, what do you mean? Most people don't want to hear it. Most people don't want to be involved in this. Most people want to be left alone in their house, sitting there barca-lounger, drinking beer and watching the game. The last thing they want to be bothered with is your politics. So when you went nuts, you lost your job. Maybe there really is a silent majority. And maybe if that silent majority became a vocal majority, all of these leftists would be purged in 2 seconds because there's substantially more people who are tired of this, but unfortunately they don't speak up. And the squeaky wheel gets the grease. Brett Weinstein has been talking about the unity party or the unity. I'm not entirely sure what it is. It's a strategy for getting a president and a vice president who are unified. I'm not going to go into the full details, but I just want to highlight this because he mentions the hidden tribes more in common graph, study, chart, whatever, showing that conservatives make up 25% of the population and progressives make up 6% and 40% consider themselves unaffiliated or independent. That means if every single conservative just spoke up, and every moderate too, because you throw in the moderates and now they're at like 40 something percent. If they all just spoke up and said no, the far left would lose in 2 seconds. 2 seconds. The problem is they're not. They're not speaking up. Well, we've seen it recently, the rise of regular people and some, there's crazy weirdos. They're going to come out on every side. But check this out. In fact, according to the last poll, the racial group who had the most positive association with the term all lives matter is, in fact, Black Americans. In this graph, you can see associations of slogans all lives matter. Do the following slogans carry a positive or negative association? When it comes to males, 54% female, 53 positive. High school or less is 62. College grads and post-grads are less likely to view all lives matter positively. And check this out. This is hilarious. Postgraduates, 41% view all lives matter negatively. Well, there you go. Now check this out. People who make $100,000 a year or more are more likely to view all lives matter negatively. Surprise, surprise. It happens to be the wealthier white people who are angry about all lives matter. Of course it is. Of course it is. People who make under 50K have a positive view of all lives matter. Perhaps that's who Trump is targeting. Poorer people, regular Americans, the middle class, the working class. Who are the Democrats and the wokenistas targeting? High profile post-grad activists who don't represent America. And maybe that's one reason Hillary Clinton lost. So when they do these polls, they're like, wow, looks like Trump's going to lose. And they don't realize that when you actually talk to regular people, they actually like all lives matter more. Maybe Trump's strategy is to light up unaffiliated non-voters because he knows that they're Americans, they're patriotic, and they don't care for this stuff. But I want to get to the point that Ryan brought up with this tweet. When you go by race, the most positive is actually Black. White people have a 55% positive view of all lives matter. Black people have a 58% positive view. Hispanic have 47 and other have 40. I like how I would fall in the other camp, I suppose. And we can see that the negative view among Black Americans is also the lowest at 16%. So who is this lady? Well, I guess I, as someone who's mixed Asian, and she, who is of East Asian, would fall in the other, where you're more likely to see a negative view. She's also I believe she's a college grad. I don't know if she's a post-grad. I don't know what her degree is. So, of course, she's biased against all lives matter, and she lives in a bubble. It's an unfortunate bubble because it resulted in her losing her dream job. Maybe you shouldn't go around making stupid, edgy jokes when you yourself have tried to get them banned. Now, I'm not saying, I don't know what her history is. I don't know who she's accused or what she's tried to cancel. The point I'm making with all of this is that she is a part of that group of people that agree with banning hate speech. Sorry, you just engaged in hate speech and threats. Registered voters. Here's the very, very important part. Total registered voters. 53% have a positive view of all lives matter. Interesting. Very interesting. Registered voters favor all lives matter, huh? Maybe not favor, but they have a positive view at 53%. They say, so registered voters total. Now, I don't know what this means. They say total, but also voters. So are they saying unregistered people? What is this? So maybe it's registered voters at 50%. Okay. Check this out. This is what's really interesting. Of party ID, independents have a 50% favorable, positive view of all lives matter, and Republicans have a 74%. Democrats have a 40%. Trump supporters, 72%. Of ideology, liberals are at 32%, moderates, 52%. And there it is. I think I know why Trump does the things he does. He may not be getting likely voters. He may not be playing well to the polling system, but it looks like he's targeting moderates who have a favorable view of all life matters. It looks like he's targeting people who make under $50,000 a year, of which there are substantially more than people who make over 100. It looks like he's targeting moderates and conservatives who make up a substantially larger voting bloc together than the Democrats, which makes me wonder. The polls say Trump is going to lose. Joe Biden is out fundraising Trump for the first time in these past 2 months. Maybe that's really good news for Biden. But I can't imagine it makes sense. The reason for this is moderates and conservatives have more in common than either of them have with the left. So I've pointed this out over and over again. For instance, people have said to me that I must be right wing and all that other nonsense. But I was like, when have we had a policy debate? When was the last time we talked policy? When was the last time we talked about progressive taxes, welfare programs, pro-life versus pro-choice, border security? It doesn't happen. It's literally just Trump bad. So no, I'm sorry. Trump bad is not a policy position. It has nothing to do with left or right. Ideologically, on the political compass, I'm pretty far left. Realistically, I'm center left, moderate liberal. So when I see someone like Andrew Yang, I'm like, hey, I like that guy. Not so much the latest things he's been doing. I haven't been following him a whole lot, but he seems to be just getting on the generic anti-Trump train. So I'm not a fan. A lot of his policy ideas I agreed with. Not all of them. I've moved right definitely on 2A issues because of, everything that's happening. But I still find myself as moderately liberal, leaning left. When I look to my left, what do I see? An ideological religious group, intersectionalism. And they're preaching their dogma and they're talking of original sin, privilege type things. And I'm like, I do not want authoritarian religion and moralism, like, authoritarian morality policing. And I look to my right and what do I see? Well, to be honest, a lot of ineffective, do nothing Republicans, complaining about things that never get done, having hearing after hearing where nothing happens. Meanwhile, everything's burning down. So I don't care for the Republican Party. They don't do anything. I've said it over and over again. I said it like 2 years ago. What do they do? What are they doing? They're doing nothing. They're just slowly losing, I guess. We'll see how it plays out in November. But Donald Trump is taking some actions now, which is the next segment I have coming up at 4 p.m., apparently deploying federal protective services. This is a bold move. This is activating federal authority to defend statues and monuments. Now, this, in my opinion, is doing something about the crazy violence coming from the far left. But let me just go back to that main point. I'll wrap it up. When I look to my left, insanity. When I look to my right, not a whole lot. Agree with them on some things like liberty, the Constitution, freedom. I'm like, okay, I can respect those things. Those are very important. So you want to talk about right versus left wing. If you believe, if these people like to say that Tim Pool is right wing, then you would believe that issues of free speech, constitutional rights are no longer left wing issues. You are straight up saying the left does not care for the country, for the flag, for the Constitution. And I'm fine if that's what you think. And if that's the new left versus right, then what you're actually saying is people who like this country and respect this country and want to see it do better versus those who hate this country and want to destroy it. I don't see that as a left versus right thing. I see it as a people who hate America and then literally the left and the right talking to each other to figure out how to stop the crazies who are burning everything down. But I suppose we will just figure out who's right come November. Unless, of course, I don't know, someone cheats and no one believes it and then it's just chaos. But stick around. Coming up at 4, that's my next segment. We're talking about Donald Trump deploying federal protective services. He's making a bold move here. That'll be at timcast.net, and I will see you all then.